The fluorescent lights of Boston General's emergency room hummed with the same relentless frequency as my exhaustion. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours. The rubber soles of my nursing clogs squeaking against linoleum floors, still damp from the storm raging outside. My lower back ached with that deep, bone-tired pain that no amount of ibuprofen could touch. But I couldn't think about that, not when Mrs. Chun in bed 3 needed her 4 replaced. Not when the attending was shouting for someone to prep trauma bay 2. 6 more hours until my shift ended. Then 4 hours of sleep before I'd be back here, doing it all over again. My phone buzzed in my scrub pocket, another text from the debt collection agency. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. The same threat they'd been making for 3 months. Final notice. Pay $127,000 in full, or we proceed with asset seizure. My mother's medical bills, now my inheritance along with her empty house, and the crushing weight of grief I hadn't had time to process. Nurse Torres. Dr. Patel's voice cut through my thoughts. Gunshot wound. Incoming. You're up. My stomach clenched. Gunshot wounds meant police reports, meant questions, meant complications I didn't have the energy for tonight. But I grabbed a trauma kit and headed for the ambulance bay. Rain immediately soaking through my thin scrubs the moment the doors opened. The paramedics wheeled him in fast, a man in his mid-30s, his expensive suit jacket dark with rain and blood. But it was his face that made me pause. Sharp cheekbones. A strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of espresso that fixed on mine with an intensity that stole my breath. Even pale from blood loss, he was devastatingly handsome. GSW to the left shoulder, the paramedic rattled off. Patient refused to give his name. Vitals stable, but no police. The man's voice was low, commanding, despite his obvious pain. Not a request, an order. Dr. Patel frowned. Sir, gunshot wounds require a police report. It's hospital policy. No, police. His eyes never left mine. I'll pay cash. Whatever it costs. Something in his gaze held me frozen. There was danger there, yes, but also a strange vulnerability. A man used to being in control, now forced to trust strangers with his life. Get him to trauma too, Dr. Patel said finally, shaking his head. We'll deal with the paperwork later. I shouldn't have agreed to it. Treating a gunshot wound without reporting it violated a dozen protocols. But as I cut away his blood-soaked shirt, revealing a lean, muscled torso marked with old scars, I found myself moving on autopilot. My hands were steady as I cleaned the wound. Through and through. No major vessels hit. Lucky. You're good at this, he murmured, watching my face instead of my hands. His voice carried an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe, softened by years in America. It's my job, I replied, not meeting those dark eyes. What's your name? Maya. The answer slipped out before I could stop it. Maya Torres. Maya. He repeated it slowly, like he was memorizing it. Thank you for not asking questions. Who shot you? So much for not asking. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Someone who regrets it now. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't a man who got robbed in an alley. This was someone who lived in a world where violence had consequences, where debts were paid in blood. I finished stitching him up in silence, hyper-aware of his gaze tracking my every movement. When I finally stepped back, he sat up despite my protests, reaching into his jacket pocket with his good arm. He pulled out a wallet, sleek black leather, probably worth more than my monthly rent, and extracted several $100 bills. For your discretion, he said, pressing the money into my hand. His fingers were warm, his touch lingering a second too long. I can't accept this, but, even as I said it, I thought of the debt collectors, of my mother's house with its peeling paint and broken furnace. You can. You will. He pulled out something else, a plain white business card with nothing but a phone number embossed in black. And if you ever need anything, Maya Torres, call me. I don't even know your name. His smile was enigmatic, dangerous. If you need to use that number, you'll find out. 2 weeks later, I stood in my mother's kitchen, soon to be someone else's kitchen, staring at the foreclosure notice taped to the front door. The debt collectors had made good on their threat. I had 72 hours to vacate the only home I'd ever known. My hands trembled as I dug through the kitchen trash, searching frantically until my fingers closed around the edge of a business card I'd thrown away in a moment of better judgment. I dialed the number with my heart pounding in my throat. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, not the man from the hospital, but someone else. Professional. Cold. Mr. Dante has been expecting your call. Miss Torres. The black sedan appeared outside my house exactly 30 minutes after the phone call ended. No explanation, no address given. He already knew where I lived. That fact should have terrified me more than it did. I watched from behind my mother's faded curtains as a driver in a dark suit opened the rear door. The man who stepped out moved with the fluid confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. Even from a distance I recognized him, the gunshot wound patient, now fully healed, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my nursing salary for 6 months. He walked up my cracked driveway like he owned it. Maybe soon he would. I opened the door before he could knock, pride demanding I meet him on equal footing even though we both knew I was drowning. Miss Torres. His voice was exactly as I remembered. Low, textured, dangerous. Up close in daylight he was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in Italian Renaissance paintings. And those eyes that seemed to see straight through me. May I come in? I stepped aside, suddenly conscious of the water-stained ceiling, the outdated furniture, the general shabbiness of everything I owned. If he noticed, his expression didn't betray it. You know why I'm here, he said, settling onto my mother's old couch with the ease of a man comfortable anywhere. You're here because I called a mysterious number like an idiot. I remained standing, arms crossed. I don't even know your name. Luca Dante. He offered it simply, watching for my reaction. The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it suggested it should. And what does Luca Dante want with a broke nurse who's about to lose her house? To help you. He pulled out a slim tablet from inside his jacket, tapping the screen a few times before turning it toward me. My entire financial life stared back at me in brutal detail. $127,000 in medical debt. My mother's death certificate, my work schedule, even my denied loan applications. You're drowning, Maya. I'm offering you a life raft. My stomach churned with equal parts anger and fear. How did you get this information? I make it my business to know things about people who interest me. No apology, no shame. Just fact. And I interest you because I stitched you up without calling the cops. Something flickered in his dark eyes, amusement. Maybe. Or appreciation. Among other reasons. What do you want in return? The question came out harder than intended, but I was exhausted from pretending I had choices. Money like that doesn't come free. Luca leaned forward, elbows on his knees, giving me his full attention. Dinner. Every Friday night. For 6 months. I blinked. That's it? Dinner, that's it. Nothing illegal, nothing that compromises your principles. Just your company, 1 evening a week. His voice softened slightly. I find myself alone more often than I'd like. You need financial stability. It's a fair exchange. There's nothing fair about this. But even as I said it, I was calculating. 26 dinners in exchange for freedom from debt, for keeping my mother's house, for sleeping without nightmares about collection agencies. What happens after 6 months? You'll have fulfilled your obligation. You'll never hear from me again, unless you choose to. He stood, closing the distance between us, until I could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and smoke. I give you my word, Maya. Just dinner. Nothing more unless you want more. The way he said that last part made my skin flush with heat. I had no business feeling. How do I know you'll keep your word? I don't know anything about you. Then you'll have 6 months to learn. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? I stared at his offered hand, knowing I was making a deal with someone dangerous. Someone who had the resources to dig into my entire life. Who'd been shot and shrugged it off. Who moved through the world with the quiet menace of a predator. But I was out of options. I shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and when his thumb brushed across my knuckles, electricity shot up my arm. "Smart choice," Luca murmured. "Check your bank account tomorrow morning." He was gone before I could respond, the black sedan disappearing down my street like it had never existed. The next morning, I stared at my phone screen in disbelief. My account balance showed zero debt. $127,000 paid in full overnight. When I called the collection agency, they confirmed it. My mother's debts were satisfied, the foreclosure cancelled. I tried researching Luca Dante, but found almost nothing. A few blurry photos at charity galas, always in the background. One old newspaper article mentioning the reclusive Dante family. Old money with older secrets. Nothing else. No social media. No business listings. Nothing. On Friday evening, the black sedan returned. Luca stood outside my door in a navy suit, impossibly handsome and impossibly dangerous. "You look beautiful," he said, though I'd only managed to change into a simple dress after my shift. As I slid into the car's leather interior, he turned to me with an expression I couldn't read. "There's someone I'd like you to meet tonight," he said quietly. "She's been gone a long time, but she's why I saved you." My heart stuttered. "Who?" His eyes held shadows and secrets and something that looked almost like grief. "Sophia." The Dante estate sat 20 miles outside Boston, hidden behind iron gates and ancient oak trees that formed a tunnel of darkness as we drove through. I caught glimpses of manicured gardens and fountain sculptures in the headlights, wealth displayed with old-world elegance rather than modern flash. "This is your home?" I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice. "One of them." Luca's tone was casual, but his hand found mine in the darkness of the car. "My father still lives here. I keep an apartment in downtown for work." The house itself was a sprawling stone mansion that looked transplanted from the Italian countryside, 3 stories of classical architecture with arched windows glowing warm against the night. As the car stopped at the circular driveway, uniformed staff appeared to open our doors. I felt desperately underdressed in my simple navy dress and clearance rack heels. Luca must have sensed my discomfort. His hand settled at the small of my back, warm and steadying. "You're perfect," he murmured. "Just breathe." The foyer stole whatever breath I had left. Marble floors reflected the light of a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my nursing degree. Twin staircases curved upward to a second-floor balcony, and art that looked museum quality adorned every wall. But my attention snagged on the massive oil portrait dominating the space directly across from the entrance. A young woman stared out from the canvas with dark, intelligent eyes. She had olive skin, dark curls that fell past her shoulders, high cheekbones, and a smile that was both warm and secretive. She wore a green dress that brought out the gold in her complexion, one hand resting on an ornate chair, the other holding a single white rose. But it was her face that made my blood run cold. She could have been my sister. My twin, the bone structure, the shape of our eyes, even the slight asymmetry of our smiles. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected someone else's life. "Sophia," Luca said softly beside me. "My sister." I tore my gaze from the portrait to look at him. "When did she? 4 years ago." "Car accident." His voice was flat, emotionless in the way of someone who'd had to tell this story too many times. "She was 23. The nameplate at the bottom of the frame confirmed it. Sophia Dante, 1996 to 2019. Beloved daughter and sister. Luca. I look exactly like her. Yes." He turned to face me fully, his expression unreadable. "That's not why I'm helping you, Maya, but I won't lie and say I didn't notice." Before I could process what that meant, A voice echoed from the top of the staircase. So, you brought another one home. An older man descended with measured steps, his silver hair immaculately styled, his custom suit fitting his still-fit frame perfectly. He had Luca's sharp features aged by decades and hardened by what looked like a lifetime of difficult decisions. This was a man who commanded empires, legal or otherwise. Father, this is Maya Torres. Luca's hand tightened protectively on my back. Maya, my father, Antonio Dante. Antonio reached the bottom of the stairs and circled me slowly. His dark eyes, so like his son's but colder, assessing every detail. I felt like livestock being evaluated at auction. Remarkable, he said finally, glancing at the portrait then back to me. The resemblance is uncanny. You could be her twin. I'm sorry for your loss, I managed, though my voice sounded thin. Loss. Antonio's smile didn't reach his eyes. Yes, though my son seems determined to find what we lost, doesn't he? The comment was directed at Luca, sharp with meaning I didn't understand. Dinner is ready, Luca said tightly, steering me away from his father and toward a formal dining room. The meal was exquisite and excruciating. We sat at one end of a table that could seat 20, served by silent staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Antonio asked me questions that felt like an interrogation. My family history, my education, my ambitions, my relationship status. Each answer seemed to satisfy him in a way that made my skin crawl. A nurse, he mused, sipping wine that probably cost more than my car. Noble profession. Self-sacrificing. Loyal. His gaze shifted to Luca. Good choice. Maya isn't a choice, father. She's a person. Luca's jaw was tight. Of course. Antonio's smile was indulgent. I simply meant, she seems suitable. I excused myself to the bathroom, desperate for a moment away from the suffocating weight of their scrutiny and that portrait's dead eyes following me through the house. The powder room was down a marble hallway lined with more family photos. Luca as a child. Sophia at various ages, their mother who'd apparently died years ago. I splashed cold water on my face and tried to steady my breathing. That's when I heard voices outside the door. 2 women, speaking in hushed tones. Another one, the first voice said, "Did you see her? Could be Sophia's ghost." "He always finds them," the second replied. "Girls who look just like her. How many has it been now? 3? 4. I lose count." A pause. "How long do you think before this one disappears too?" My hand froze on the door handle, heart hammering against my ribs. They'll hear you. You remember what happened to Rosa when she talked too much? Their footsteps faded down the hall, leaving me alone with the sound of my own ragged breathing and a question that turned my blood to ice. What happened to the other girls who looked like Sophia? I tried to cancel the next dinner. I don't think this is a good idea. I told Luca over the phone Monday morning, my voice steadier than I felt. The debt is paid. We can call it even. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. When he spoke, his voice was soft but unyielding. "We made an agreement, Maya. 6 months. I kept my promise about the debt. Now keep yours. But those women the maids mentioned, gossip, nothing more." His tone sharpened. "My staff will be disciplined for upsetting you. As for our arrangement, I expect to see you Friday at 8. He hung up before I could argue. The rest of the week, I told myself I'd refuse when the car came. I'd stay inside, ignore the doorbell. Reclaim some control over this situation that felt increasingly like quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. But Friday at 8, I found myself sliding into that leather interior again, wearing a new dress that had appeared on my doorstep that morning. Midnight blue silk with a designer label I'd only seen in magazines. Accompanied by a note in bold, elegant handwriting, "The color will bring out your eyes." Luca's gaze when I emerged from the car confirmed he'd been right. "You're stunning," he breathed, and the genuine appreciation in his voice made something warm unfurl in my chest despite my reservations. Dinner was at an exclusive restaurant I'd only read about, the kind with no prices on the menu and a year-long waiting list. We sat in a private room overlooking the harbour, and for the first time, Luca seemed almost nervous. "I owe you an apology," he said, fingers toying with his wineglass. "My father was inappropriate," the staff gossiped. "You have every right to walk away. Then why don't I?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His dark eyes held mine. "Perhaps the same reason I can't let you." The conversation shifted after that, becoming easier. He asked about my work, and I found myself telling him about Mrs. Chan's recovery, about the teenage overdose victim I'd helped save last week. He listened with the focused intensity I was beginning to recognize as uniquely his, like nothing else existed except my words. "You save people," he said quietly. "You saved me. I just stitched you up." "No." His hand covered mine on the table. "You asked no questions, judged nothing, saw someone in pain and helped. That's rarer than you think, Maya." The gifts started arriving daily after that. A first edition copy of my favorite novel appeared at my door. Then a cashmere coat when the weather turned cold, impossibly soft, perfectly fitted, in a shade of cream that made my skin glow. Then art supplies, when he somehow learned I used to paint before nursing school consumed my life. Each gift came with a note, his handwriting becoming as familiar as my own. "For the cold nights ahead, stay warm. Elle, your hands create beauty whether healing or painting. Elle thought of you when I saw this. Elle, I should have returned them, should have maintained boundaries. Instead, I wore the coat, read the book, set up the easel in my mother's old studio and painted for the first time in years. By the fourth dinner, a driver had begun picking me up for work. Mr. Dante's orders, the man explained when I protested. He likes knowing you're safe. By the sixth dinner, I realized I was looking forward to Fridays with an intensity that frightened me. Luca was different when we were alone, the cold control he showed his father and staff melting into something raw and human. He spoke of Sophia in fragments like handling broken glass, her laugh, how she'd sneak cookies before dinner, the way she'd argued with their father about everything. "She was the only one who made me feel like I could be more than what this family demanded," he said one night, voice thick with old grief. "Like I could be good." "You are good," I said without thinking. His smile was heartbreaking. "You don't know enough about me to say that, but I was learning the way he rubbed his left shoulder when stressed, the gunshot wound still bothering him. Learning that he took his coffee black with one sugar, that he'd rather listen than speak, that beneath the dangerous exterior was someone profoundly lonely. I was falling for him. For a man whose home was a shrine to his dead sister. For a man whose previous girlfriends had apparently vanished. For a man who'd bought my company with the same ease he bought designer dresses. On our 8th dinner, Luca took me back to the estate. But this time we didn't go inside. Instead, he led me to a garden behind the house where roses bloomed despite the October chill. "Sophia planted these," he said softly. "White roses. Her favorite." Under the moonlight, surrounded by ghost-white flowers, he turned to me. His hand cupped my cheek with a tenderness that made my breath catch. "Sometimes I forget you're not her," he whispered, his thumb tracing my lower lip. I should have pulled away. Should have demanded he see me, Maya, not his dead sister's echo. Instead, when his mouth found mine, I kissed him back with desperate hunger that shocked us both. His hands tangled in my hair as he pressed me against a stone wall, the kiss deepening into something dark and consuming. I tasted wine and want and 4 years of grief he'd been drowning in. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, his forehead rested against mine. "Maya," he breathed, "my name a prayer or a curse? What are you doing to me?" I didn't have an answer. I was too busy wondering the same thing about him. The woman was waiting outside Boston General when my shift ended Tuesday night. She leaned against the silver sedan in the staff parking lot, her detective's badge catching the harsh fluorescent light. "Maya Torres?" Her voice was crisp, professional. "I'm Detective Rachel Kim, Boston PD. I need to speak with you about Luca Dante. My stomach dropped. I glanced around the nearly empty lot, suddenly aware of how isolated I was. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. She held up both hands, showing she meant no threat. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Detective Kim was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She pulled out a tablet, her expression grim. How long have you been seeing Luca Dante? It's not like that. I stopped, realizing I didn't know what we were. Why are you asking? Because you're not the first woman who looks like Sofia Dante to get involved with him. She tapped her screen, turning it toward me. This is Emily Santos. The photo showed a young woman with dark curls and olive skin, smiling at the camera. She could have been my cousin. My sister. Emily started dating Luca in early 2020. 3 months later, she disappeared. Rachel swiped to another photo. Grace Lee, 2021. Same pattern, met Luca. Dated for a few months. Vanished without a trace. Grace had the same bone structure, the same coloring. My mouth went dry. Isabella Moreno, 2022. Another swipe, another face that could have been mine. Missing persons report filed by her sister. Last seen leaving the Dante estate. This doesn't prove anything, I said, but my voice shook. Maybe they just left town. That's what Luca wants people to think. Rachel's eyes softened with something like pity. Maya, I've been investigating the Dante family for 3 years. They're not just old money. They're connected to organized crime, money laundering, things that would make your blood run cold. And Luca is the heir to all of it. I thought of the gunshot wound, the way staff feared him, his father's cold assessment of me like I was property. Every woman Luca gets close to looks exactly like his dead sister, Rachel continued. And every single one of them disappears after a few months. You're number 4, Maya, and I'll be damned if I let you become another statistic. My hands trembled. I thought of Luca's kiss in the rose garden, the way he'd whispered sometimes, I forget you're not her. Not a romantic confession, a red flag I'd been too blind to see. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. Get out. Now. Before it's too late. Rachel pressed a business card into my hand. And if he won't let you go, call me. Day or night, I can protect you. From what? What do you think he'll do? Her silence was answer enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Rachel's words echoing in my mind. You're number 4. I pulled out my phone and searched each name she'd mentioned. Emily Santa's last social media post from March 2020. Nothing since. Grace Lee abandoned apartment. Belongings left behind. Isabella Moreno official missing persons case still open. All of them looked like Sofia. All of them dated Luca. All of them gone. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Thinking of you. Sweet dreams, Maya. The words felt less like affection and more like surveillance. Like he was watching, even now, making sure I stayed in line. I got out of bed at 2 a.m., suddenly needing to know. The car he'd given me sat in my driveway, a sleek Mercedes that was far too expensive for someone like me. I'd asked him to return it, but he'd insisted. I sleep better knowing you're safe, he'd said. Safe or tracked? I grabbed a flashlight and went outside in my pajamas, the November cold biting through the thin fabric. I started searching, under the bumper, inside the wheel wells, beneath the seats. Nothing, and my fingers brushed something small and hard attached to the underside of the passenger seat. I pulled it free, my heart hammering. A GPS tracker. Small, black, professional grade. I stood in my driveway holding the evidence of Luca's surveillance, Detective Kim's warnings ringing in my ears, and felt my world tilt on its axis. I protect what's mine, he'd said. I'd thought it was romantic. Now it felt like a prison sentence. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Luca. Can't wait to see you Friday. I have something special planned. I stared at the message, at the tracker in my palm, at the designer coat hanging in my closet, and the cashmere dress I'd been planning to wear for our next dinner. He'd given me everything I needed, except the truth, except my freedom. except a choice. The question was, what would he take when I tried to leave? I didn't wait until Friday. Wednesday morning, I called the number Luca had given me that first night. The same cold, professional voice answered. Mr. Dante is in a meeting. Tell him I found the tracker. Tell him we need to talk. Now. 30 minutes later, the black sedan pulled up to the hospital. Luca emerged wearing a charcoal suit, his expression unreadable as he approached. Even furious with him, my traitress's body responded to his presence. The way he moved, the intensity of his dark eyes, the quiet power he radiated. Maya. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Don't. I pulled the GPS tracker from my scrub pocket and held it up between us. You've been tracking me? He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Yes. That's all you have to say. Yes? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. That's insane, Luca. That's controlling and invasive and necessary. His jaw tightened. You work night shifts in a hospital, drive through dangerous neighborhoods at 3 a.m. I protect what's mine, Maya. I won't apologize for keeping you safe. I'm not yours. The words burst out sharper than intended. And what about the other women? Emily Santos, Grace Lee, Isabella Moreno. Did you protect them too? Is that why they all disappeared? Something flickered across his face. Pain. Anger. I couldn't tell. Who told you those names? It doesn't matter. What matters is that you've been lying to me. About everything. I've never lied to you. His voice dropped dangerously low. I may not have told you everything, but I have never lied. Semantics. I crossed my arms, trying to create a barrier between us, even though I wanted nothing more than to believe him. 3 women who looked exactly like your dead sister dated you and vanished. Now I'm number 4. Tell me why I shouldn't run right now. Luca was silent for a long moment, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. Finally, he met my eyes with raw vulnerability I'd never seen before. Because they left. They chose to leave when they learned the truth about my world. He took a cautious step closer. But you're different, Maya. You're stronger. And if you want the truth, all of it, I'll show you. Tonight. Show me what? Everything. The word carried weight, promise, and warning. No more secrets. No more half-truths. But once you see, you can't unsee it. You'll have to decide if you can live with what I am. I should have refused. Should have walked away, called Detective Kim. Disappeared like the others had. Instead, I heard myself say, tonight. 8 o'clock. And Luca? I stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. If I don't like what I see, I'm gone. Tracker or no tracker. His hand rose to cut my cheek, thumb brushing my skin with heartbreaking tenderness. Fair enough. That evening, Luca drove me to the estate himself. No driver, no staff, just the 2 of us in his sleek Aston Martin, the silence heavy with unspoken tension. When we arrived, he led me not to the main house but around back, to a stone structure I'd never noticed before. The original wine cellar, he explained, unlocking a heavy wooden door. My grandfather built it. Now it's something else. The stairs descended into darkness. Luca flipped a switch, and soft lights illuminated a space that stole my breath. It was a shrine. Photos of Sophia covered every wall from infancy to her last days. Her childhood drawings hung in frames. A glass case displayed her jewelry, her favorite books, even her dance shoes. In the center sat a Victorian settee positioned before a larger portrait of her, this one more candid than the formal one upstairs. She was laughing, wind in her hair, absolutely radiant. This is where I come when I miss her, Luca said quietly, his voice thick. When the guilt gets too heavy to carry anywhere else. Guilt? I turned to him. The accident wasn't your fault, wasn't it? His laugh was bitter. She was driving to meet me. I'd asked her to come to the city, said it was urgent. If I hadn't called, she'd still be here. I finished, understanding dawning. This wasn't just grief. This was a man slowly drowning in responsibility for a death he couldn't prevent. I moved through the space, studying the timeline of Sophia's life preserved in photographs and artifacts. Then something caught my eye, a shelf of journals, leather-bound and organized by date. I pulled one down, noting the year embossed on the spine, 2018. Out of curiosity, I reached for the last journal on the shelf. The date made my blood freeze. 2023, Luca. My voice came out strangled. If Sophia died in 2019. Why is there a journal entry from last year? When I turned, Luca stood utterly still. The silence was deafening. His face drained of color. His eyes fixed on the journal in my hands with something that looked like horror. You weren't supposed to see that. Luca's silence stretched until I thought I might scream. Finally, he moved toward the back of the basement where I'd never noticed a door, nearly invisible against the stone wall. His hand hesitated on the handle. What I'm about to show you, he said, voice barely above a whisper, changes everything. If you want to leave now, I'll understand. I'll let you go. No tracker, no surveillance, no contact. You'll be free. Show me. The words came out steadier than I felt. He unlocked the door. The room beyond was nothing like the shrine outside. It was warm, lived, in a bedroom with soft lighting, floral curtains, and a hospital bed positioned near a window that showed a carefully curated view of the rose garden. Medical equipment beeped quietly in the corner. Fresh white roses sat on the nightstand. And in the bed, oh my God, I breathed. Sophia lay propped against pillows, eyes closed, breathing rhythmically, but she wasn't dead. Very much alive, though clearly not present. Her dark hair had been carefully brushed, her skin clean and cared for, and four fed into her arm, and monitors tracked her vital signs. The accident, Luca said behind me, his voice breaking. It didn't kill her. It should have, but it didn't. I approached slowly, my nurse's training taking over. Severe brain damage, I assessed clinically. Vegetative state, maybe minimally conscious. She'd need round-the-clock care, specialized equipment, constant monitoring. How long? I asked. 4 years. Since the night of the crash. He moved to Sophia's bedside, taking her limp hand with infinite gentleness. The doctors said she'd never wake up, that I should let her go. But I couldn't, Maya. She's my sister. My responsibility. So you faked her death. The pieces clicked into place, made everyone think she was gone. To protect her. His eyes met mine, desperate for understanding. My father's enemies would have used her as leverage. The media would have turned her into a spectacle. This way she's safe, hidden, cared for by the best medical staff money can buy. I thought of the shrine outside, the portrait in the foyer, the elaborate fiction he'd maintained for 4 years. And the other women. Emily, Grace? Isabella? Luca's jaw tightened. I hired them. Professional companions who looked like Sophia. I thought. He laughed bitterly. I thought if she had visitors, people who reminded her of herself, maybe some part of her would respond. The doctors said familiar stimuli might help, but they left, I said quietly, understanding dawning. They couldn't handle it. Emily lasted 3 weeks before she broke down crying, said it was too disturbing. Grace made it 2 months. Isabella, he shook his head. She never even made it through the first visit. They took the money I offered for their silence and disappeared. And me? My voice cracked. Is that all I am? Another hired companion? No. The word burst from him with raw intensity. He crossed to me, hands framing my face. You were, that first night in the hospital when I saw you. Yes, the resemblance made me notice you. And yes, I paid your debt intending to ask you to visit Sophia. But, I whispered, afraid of his answer. But then I got to know you. Your strength, your compassion, the way you see the good in people, even when you shouldn't. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I fell in love with you, Maya. Not because you look like my sister, but because you're you. That's why I kept putting off asking you to meet her. Why I've been selfish, keeping you to myself. Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to think this wasn't all some elaborate manipulation. But how could I trust anything he said? I need time, I managed, to process this. All of it, of course. He dropped his hands, stepping back. Take whatever time you need. But Maya, his voice caught, whatever you decide, know that I love you. I would never hurt you. And I'll prove it, whatever it takes. I left him there with his sister, fleeing up the basement stairs and out into the cold November night. My phone was buzzing insistently in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Detective Kim. 3 missed calls. I answered the 4th. Hello? Maya, thank God. Rachel's voice was urgent. I found Emily Santos. She's alive and she wants to talk to you. My heart stopped. About what? About what really happened in that basement. A pause heavy with meaning. About why she ran for her life. We met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, far from Boston proper. Emily Santos looked nothing like her photo from 3 years ago. She'd cut her dark hair short and dyed it blonde, wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast day, and kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to burst through at any moment. Thank you for coming, she said as I slid into the booth across from her. Her hands trembled around her coffee cup. Detective Kim said you wanted to talk about Luca Dante. I kept my voice low, conscious of the other patrons around us. Emily's laugh was sharp, bitter. Luca, God, I haven't said his name out loud in years. She removed her sunglasses, and I saw the fear in her eyes, the kind that never fully leaves. How long have you been seeing him? There, months. But we're not exactly. I stopped, unsure how to categorize what Luca and I were. Let me guess. He paid off some debt for you? Showered you with gifts? Made you feel like you were the only person in the world who mattered? When I didn't respond, she nodded grimly. That's his pattern. That's how it started with me too. He said he hired you as a companion for his sister. Is that what he told you? Emily leaned forward, her voice urgent. Maya, I wasn't hired. I was his girlfriend. We met at an art gallery, dated for 3 months. I fell in love with him. Completely, stupidly in love. My stomach churned. But the others, Grace, Isabella, also girlfriends. Not employees. She pulled out her phone, showing me photos I'd never seen online. Emily and Luca at restaurants. On a beach, his arm around her waist. They looked happy, real. He never told any of us about Sophia until it was too late. Too late for what? Emily set down her phone and slowly rolled up her left sleeve. A jagged scar ran from her wrist to her elbow, the kind left by something sharp and violent. That's what happened when I met Sophia. I stared at the scar, my medical training automatically assessing it. Deep laceration, probably required surgery to repair. Sophia did that. Luca brought me to the estate, finally ready to explain why he'd been so secretive. He took me to that basement room. Emily's voice dropped. When I saw her live, not dead like he'd told everyone, I was shocked, but I understood. She needed care, protection. I told him I'd help however I could. What happened? She woke up. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Or something in her woke up. The moment she saw me, she started screaming. Not words, just these horrible guttural sounds. Then she grabbed a pair of surgical scissors from the medical tray, and she touched her scar. She moved so fast. The nurses said vegetative patients can't do that, but she did. My blood ran cold. Lucas stopped her. Eventually, but not before she nearly severed an artery. Emily pulled her sleeve back down. He rushed me to a private hospital, paid for everything, begged me not to tell anyone. Said Sophia had episodes sometimes that her brain damage made her violent and unpredictable. That he couldn't let anyone know because they'd take her away. Put her in a state facility. So you left. He paid me $200,000 to relocate and sign an NDA. Emily's voice hardened. I took the money and ran because I was terrified. Because I realized Luca wasn't protecting his sister, he was enabling something dangerous. He can't see it, Maya. He's so consumed by guilt over the accident that he refuses to acknowledge what she's become. I thought of Luca's face when he looked at Sophia, the tenderness in his touch. The others, did she attack them too? Grace has a scar on her neck. Isabella told her sister that Sophia tried to smother her with a pillow. Emily reached across the table, gripping my hand. Luca makes excuses, says it's the brain damage, says she doesn't know what she's doing. But I saw her eyes, Maya, when she came at me with those scissors. There was recognition there. Awareness. She knew exactly what she was doing. Why would she attack you? Because she thought I was stealing her brother. Because in whatever twisted way her damaged mind works, she can't stand seeing Luca with anyone who looks like her. Emily squeezed my hand harder. You need to leave, Maya. Before you become another scar she leaves behind. Another woman who runs in the middle of the night. I pulled my hand back, my mind reeling. Need to think. Don't think too long. Emily stood, replacing her sunglasses. The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Trust me. I know. She was gone before I could ask anything else. I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, Emily's words warring with Luca's in my mind. He'd lied about hiring the women, but had he lied about everything else? Was Sophia truly dangerous, or was she a brain-damaged patient having involuntary reactions? When I finally returned to my car, a white envelope sat tucked under the windshield wiper. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery, the handwriting elegant but shaky, like someone relearning to write, "Stay away from my brother. He's mine." As I didn't go home, I drove straight to Luca's downtown apartment, the note from Sophia burning in my pocket. He answered on the second knock, surprise flickering across his face. I pushed past him, holding up the elegant handwriting. She wrote this: Sophia, stay away from my brother. He's mine. Luca's face drained of color as he read the note. How aware is she really? I demanded. And don't lie to me again. Some days she's completely unresponsive. He moved to pour a drink with unsteady hands. Other days she's lucid. Brief windows where she's almost herself. And when she's lucid, she attacks women who look like her. I showed him the photo Emily had sent, the scar running down her arm. You told me you hired them as companions. That was a lie. They were your girlfriends. His jaw clenched. Yes, I dated them. I thought if Sophia could see me moving on, maybe she'd let go. Maybe she'd heal. Or maybe she'd hurt them. Anger overrode my fear. Emily nearly bled out. Grace has a scar on her neck. You paid them off, made them disappear so no one would know what Sophia really is. She's not a monster. His voice turned fierce. She's sick. She doesn't understand what she's doing, doesn't she? I held up the note. Seems pretty clear. That's not brain damage, Luca. That's jealousy. He set down his glass with controlled precision. What do you want me to say? That I've been protecting her at everyone else's expense? His voice cracked. I know what she's done, but she's still my sister. Tell me the truth. What really happened the night of the accident? The silence stretched until I thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he turned to face me, and I saw 4 years of secrets in his eyes. Sophia discovered something about our family business. My father's connections. Things that could destroy us. He took a breath. She threatened to go to the police. Said she couldn't be part of it anymore. My stomach dropped. The accident wasn't an accident. The admission hung between us. My father's people tampered with her car. Made it look like she lost control. His voice broke. I didn't know until after. Until she was already broken. By then it was too late. Your father tried to kill her, I whispered, to silence her. When she survived, he wanted to finish it. Pulled the plug. Luca's hands clenched into fists. I faked her death instead. Hid her where he couldn't reach her. So you've been protecting her from your own father. The complexity made my head spin. And living with the guilt every day, he crossed to me. Desperation in every line. I failed her, Maya. This is my penance, keeping her alive, even if she can never truly recover. And the women she hurts, that's just collateral damage. No, that's why I kept you away from her. I thought if I could make her understand gradually, I'm not different, Luca. I'm just next in line. I stepped back. That note proves she already knows about me, which means I'm already in danger. I won't let her hurt you. You can't promise that. Not when your guilt blinds you to reality. I met his eyes steadily. What do you want me to do? The question came out raw, broken. She's my sister. I can't abandon her. I'm not asking you to abandon her. I took a breath. I'm asking you to see her clearly, to get her proper psychiatric care, to stop enabling her violence and start actually helping her. And if she can't be helped, then you make the hard choice between protecting your sister and protecting innocent women. I stepped closer, taking his hands. Between guilt and the future, and where do you fit in that future? I don't know yet. The honesty hurt. I love you, Luca. Against all logic, I love you. But I can't be with someone who puts me in danger and calls it protection. I've never lied about loving you. No. But you've lied about everything else. And love without truth isn't enough. I headed for the door, then turned back. You want to know what I need? Let me meet her. The real her, conscious and aware. And let me decide if I'm strong enough for your world. The next morning, Luca called. She's awake, lucid. If you want to meet her, it has to be now. An hour later. I stood in that basement bedroom facing the woman whose ghost I'd been living with. Sophia's dark eyes tracked me as I entered, sharp, aware, intelligent. Our resemblance was even more striking up close. So, she said, her voice raspy but clear. You're the new one. I approached slowly, maintaining distance. I'm Maya. I know who you are. Her lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. He brings them all down here eventually. It's girls who look like me. I'm not here to replace you, aren't you? The gesture was eerily familiar. I'd seen Luca do the same. That's what they all say. Right before they try to take him away from me. I understood then. This wasn't just jealousy or brain damage. This was a woman trapped in a nightmare, alive but not living, watching her brother fall in love with echoes of who she used to be. What do you want, Sophia? I asked quietly. Her eyes met mine with devastating clarity. I want him to let me go. Sophia's words echoed in the basement long after I left. I want him to let me go. I found Luca in the rose garden, exactly where I knew he'd be. He stood among the white blooms his sister had planted years ago, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. She wants to die, I said quietly. He didn't turn. I know. How long have you known? Since the beginning. His voice was hollow. Every lucid moment she begs me, says she's tired, that this isn't living, but I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose her again. I moved to stand beside him, our shoulders nearly touching. You already lost her, Luca. 4 years ago. What you're keeping alive isn't Sophia anymore. It's your guilt. Don't. The word came out sharp, defensive. Someone has to say it. I turned to face him. You're not protecting her. You're prolonging her suffering because you can't forgive yourself for what your father did. I should have stopped it. Should have seen. You couldn't have known. I took his hand, feeling him tremble. But you can make it right now. You can give her what she's asking for. Peace. And then what? His dark eyes met mine, raw with pain. I let her go and become exactly what my father is. A man who sacrifices family for convenience? No, you become a man who loves his sister enough to honor her wishes. I squeezed his hand. That's not weakness, Luca. That's the hardest kind of strength. He pulled away, pacing among the roses. I can't make that decision. Not alone. You're not alone. I stepped closer. I'm here. And I'll stay if you make the right choice. Not just for Sophia, but for all of it. The family business, the secrets, the violence. It all has to change. You're asking me to dismantle everything my family built. I'm asking you to build something better. I held his gaze. With me. But only if you're ready to walk away from the darkness. The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Finally, Luca nodded. Okay. Sophia died peacefully 3 weeks later, surrounded by the best palliative care team money could buy. Luca held her hand as her breathing slowed, whispering forgiveness neither of them probably believed but both desperately needed. At her private funeral, the second one, the real one, only a handful of people attended. Me, Luca, and the medical staff who'd cared for her. Antonio Dante was notably absent. When Luca scattered her ashes in the rose garden, I saw something shift in him. The guilt didn't disappear, but its stranglehold loosened. The next 18 months were the hardest of my life. Luca began systematically dismantling his father's empire. He cooperated with federal investigators, turned over evidence, testified in closed hearings. In exchange for immunity, he helped bring down 24 members of organized crime families, including several of his father's closest associates. Antonio Dante died of a heart attack before he could stand trial. Luca didn't cry at that funeral. Detective Kim closed her investigation, satisfied that the Dante family's criminal operations had ended. The missing women, Isabella, received settlements large enough to rebuild their lives. Emily sent me a card. Thank you for finishing what I couldn't. But not everything changed overnight. There were threats from old enemies, late-night security details, moments when I questioned whether love was worth this constant edge of danger. Luca gave me space when I needed it, held me when I didn't, and slowly proved that the man he was becoming was worth the risk. Now, standing in the newly opened Dante Memorial Hospital, funded entirely by legitimately earned money and Luca's inheritance, I watch him cut the ribbon with steady hands. The facility specializes in traumatic brain injury care and domestic violence recovery. Sophia's portrait hangs in the main lobby, but this time she's painted as she was before the accident. Vibrant, alive, free. What are you thinking? Luca asks, sliding an arm around my waist after the photographers leave. I lean into him, this dangerous, complicated man who'd given me everything I thought I needed. Money, security, protection, before I realized what I actually needed was truth. I'm thinking about how sometimes the wrong debt leads to exactly the right life, I say softly. He turns me to face him, and I see in his eyes the man he's fought so hard to become. Not his father's son. Not Sophia's guilty keeper. Just Luca flawed, trying mine. I never thanked you properly, he murmurs. For saving me. I just stitched you up. No. He presses his forehead to mine. You did much more than that. As he kisses me under the hospital's bright lights, surrounded by the legacy we built from ashes and secrets, I realize the mafia boss gave me everything I needed after all. He gave me the truth about Sophia. And in doing so, he gave me himself.